Hello everyone, Silent here and welcome back to another Minecraft Bedrock Edition tutorial. Today I'll be showing you a bunch of different things that you can do with the Sculk sensor in Minecraft, and I'll be showing you all of the different mechanics in the Sculk sensor as well. This is the most advanced and most complicated redstone component in all of Minecraft, and there is a lot of different stuff that you can do with it. With this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to build a bunch of different contraptions using the Sculk sensor, but more importantly, you're going to learn exactly how the Sculk sensor works. That way you can build and design your own contraptions. If you already know all the mechanics about the Sculk sensor, feel free to skip to this part of the video where I show you how to build a bunch of cool stuff with it. But otherwise, definitely learn about the mechanics of the Sculk sensor because it is super interesting. So at this point, you probably know that the Sculk sensor is a little block that detects vibrations or noises in the Minecraft world, such as walking, jumping, flying. Pretty much anything that makes noise in this game, the Sculk sensor can detect it, down to even like eating food and equipping armor. So whenever the Sculk sensors detect something, that'll emit a redstone signal, and we can use that to do a bunch of different things. The Sculk sensor is a little bit noisy, so if we activate that, as you can see, it's making a noise, but if you waterlog that, it will silence it and it won't make any noise at all. That is incredibly convenient for more discrete redstone contraptions, and this allows us to hide the fact that we're even detecting vibrations to begin with. Sculk sensors can't be pushed or pulled by anything. They are an immovable object, and slime and honey also don't stick to them either. If you ever want to prevent a Sculk sensor from reading a sound or other detection, all you need to do is surround it with wool on one or more sides, and wool will actually prevent the sound from reaching the Sculk sensor. So now we can jump around and do anything we want over here and drop items, and that Sculk sensor won't notice us at all. Keep in mind that the Sculk sensor activates for 2 seconds, and during its activation time, it can't read any other sound vibrations or get activated again, so you can't spam activations on the Sculk sensor. There is a cooldown. The Sculk sensor has a fairly large detection range. It detects 8 blocks in every direction, so that is a fairly big footprint. To give you an idea of what that looks like, this is basically the range of the Sculk sensor above ground, and of course it's the same going below ground too. Those are the basics of the Sculk sensor, but to harvest its full potential, there are 2 more advanced mechanics you should know about. Sculk sensors can put out a different range of redstone signals depending on how powerful the signal they detect is. So if you are standing 8 blocks away and you make a noise from them, that is going to make a very faint signal. As you can see, it's only a single block, but if you jump right on top of the Sculk sensor, that is going to give you a very strong signal strength. You can do a bunch of different stuff with this, but it's something to keep in mind that if you are just feeding it directly into a redstone line, it is going to vary depending on how far away the activation is. If you want to use just a raw Sculk sensor, most of the time you're probably going to want to put a repeater off of it, that way you get a reliable signal strength out of it. The final mechanic is the most complicated one, and this also allows for the most customization using the Sculk sensor. So if you read the Sculk sensor using a comparator, that'll allow you to differentiate between different types of activations. So for example, a fishing bobber landing on the ground next to it will give it that level of signal strength. Placing or breaking a block will give it a different type of signal strength. So this allows you to tell what is activating your Sculk sensor and only activate during specific, sound vibrations, which is really powerful. So you can differentiate between all kinds of different things. You can see a little snippet of the Wikipedia page right here, and this gives you the breakdown of what things will give what signal strength using the comparator and Sculk sensor. Just to give a quick example, you can tell if someone places a block next to it because that gives a signal strength of 12, and then you can tell if someone breaks a block because that gives a signal strength of 13 out of it. You can also tell if someone is walking because that gives a signal strength of 1, if they're jumping because that gives a signal strength of 5, and just all kinds of different things. It is honestly the most powerful part of the Sculk sensor. The only issue with this system is that there are multiple things that can give the same signal strength, but typically those things are completely different from one another and they're not really related, which allows us to do a lot of very specific things using this one mechanic. Using a small circuit like this, we can determine what activation is the one that we're looking for and only activate our redstone when that activation happens. So this circuit right here will detect when a fishing bobber lands on the ground, and as you see, both of our redstone lamps turn on, and then if we do literally anything else like power a piston, those redstone lamps do not turn on. This circuit is customizable to be any signal strength that you want from 1 to 15, and this allows you to pick what thing you want it to activate with. So how you determine this is you go to the wiki and you see what activation you're looking for, and that'll give you a signal strength on the left hand side. So for example, a projectile land is going to be a signal strength of 8. So basically what you want to do is you get your book of 30 pages, put that into your lectern, and you want this to go over one less page than the signal strength that you're looking for. So it's already on page 1, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And this is going to take us to page 13, basically. And that is going to configure the system so that it only activates with signal strength of 8 activations. Basically, using this contraption right here, or either of these two circuits, will give you the power to do anything you want. Secret entrances, for activations, for turning on or off builds or farms, for setting traps, or for seeing if someone has entered your base or messed with your storage system. So this is design number 1 for the circuit, and it's basically identical to design number 2. It doesn't really matter which way you build it, it's kind of up to you. And also, keep in mind, if you hide this behind a wall, for example, people can still notice the little activation animation because it sends a little signal to the Sculk sensor. So I would recommend putting this underneath the floor because you're not really going to notice that signal going downwards as often. Basically, it's just going to be harder to notice that you're activating a Sculk sensor if the signal goes straight into the floor immediately. Of course, you can also combine this with the wool occlusion. That way the Sculk sensor only detects you in certain spots on the floor, which is even more ways of customizing your system and hiding it even better. So for example, if you surround it with wool going all the way up to the floor level, you're pretty much only going to activate the Sculk sensor from this middle location right here. As you can see, there is a number of things to know about the Sculk sensor, and it's not as simple as it appears on the surface, but this gives us a lot of things that we can do with it. So let's check out a whole bunch of different contraptions that you can build. If you want some Sculk sensor secret entrances, I already made a video all about secret entrances. You can check that out in the upper right or down in the description. Link is everywhere. Naturally, the first thing that you want to build with a Sculk sensor is a bomb. So this one right here is exactly that. If you interact with any of these blocks right here, or even just walk right here, then yeah, as you can see, this is a remarkably simple system to build. So we have a Sculk sensor in the ground right here surrounded with wool. So anytime you interact with this 3x3 area, that's going to activate your Sculk sensor and activate this dispenser, which will typically have 1 arrow in it. That's going to shoot up through a piece of lava and into the bottom of this trapdoor right here. And that's going to ignite just like a ton of TNT minecarts. So building this is of course extremely simple. You should be able to build this just by looking at it, but place in the arrow at the very last step because that's how you actually set the thing off. And basically what you want to do is place a piece of rail on top of this trapdoor, use this dispenser to place in all of your TNT minecarts, just so, you know, activate that with a lever, and then to get rid of that rail, you just open that, and then bam, now it's ready to be set off. Anytime that you activate anything in this 3x3 area, it doesn't have to be a tree, it could be any vibration or activation that is going to blow up this entire area. When you're building this, you want to build it from the right side to the left side and pillar up out of this area. That way none of the noises or blocks you place actually activate that Sculk sensor. Just taking a nice stroll through the forest and I'm basically dead. So yeah, as you can see, it works pretty well, and it makes quite the crater as well. Of course, you don't need to build anything out of obsidian, but that's just so you know, like, where the bomb was. So keep in mind that the knockback from the TNT can sometimes throw the player away from the explosion, so they don't get the full damage of what they should, and there's not really much you can do about that. I would like to share with you a trick to stack ender crystals, because these things are also a high explosive and worth your time if you feel like setting some Sculk traps. So all you need is a sticky piston on a loop like this and a glass pane in front of it, and then a piece of obsidian right here, and then you basically just stand here and hold down the right click, and that is going to stack just an absolute ton of these end crystals. Now, of course, it's pretty obvious what happens when you activate this, but just for show and tell, yeah, you get a little bit of airtime out of it. You make a small crater. It's pretty fun. Taking a nice stroll down a beautiful tunnel, and suddenly you're just dead. Just straight up dead out of nowhere. And the nice thing about this is it didn't even blow up the actual ground around it. It just removed my entire structure. Of course, this one is incredibly basic and easy to set up. We have the Sculk sensor hidden in here, and then, of course, a redstone line, one dispenser of an arrow, and that is as simple as that. This can be hidden in the floor, the ceiling, a wall. Now, the nice thing about end crystals is they blow up no matter what, unless mob griefing is turned off. End crystal knockback can be a little bit crazy, so you might want to put a layer of obsidian behind your walls or your ceiling in order to keep the players contained. That way they take maximum damage. This next trap is one of my favorites because it's a little bit subtle and it actually allows the player to commit a crime first. So we have a little bit of just, you know, a pretty basic room, not really my best decoration job. And in here we have a chest. And if you just like peek in there and don't do anything with it and run away, nothing's gonna happen. But if you actually take your time to read what it says, it's a hi with a smiley face. And even if you don't take any items, there's no time for that. The entire room traps you in and the whole floor becomes lava instantly. There's not enough time to break out of here. Water buckets won't save you. And the floor is lava. So that system is a little bit diabolical. We are reading the chest with a Sculk sensor down below it, and whenever the chest closes, after the player being in it for a couple seconds, that's when the whole thing activates. And even if you try and activate it again, it's not gonna deactivate. You have to come down here and manually adjust the redstone. That way there's no way for the player to escape. And even if they did somehow escape, it would be pretty obvious that someone triggered it because, you know, there's lava everywhere and all of your carpets are gone. This one's pretty basic to set up. We have a checkerboard pattern of dispensers facing upwards with lava buckets in them, and then we just go ahead and put a bunch of carpets over them, and you can put your chest anywhere in here that you want. Underneath those dispensers are observers facing downwards towards a redstone floor, and then down here we have the same system that I showed you earlier for detecting what action you want to read. It doesn't need to be a chest, it could be anything else that you want, and then a piston with a redstone block on it going into a sticky piston, and that activates all of your redstone lines. Of course, you also want to close up the door behind them so they can't just run out of there. I would recommend building the ceiling out of lower half slabs and maybe building the walls out of backwards stairs. That way they can't place water above them or to the sides of them because the waterlogged blocks would trap it, and that way it doesn't ruin your build and try to save that player. Another pretty innocent looking hallway, and then, you know, as you start walking down it, you realize it's a trap, and Admiral Akbar was correct the whole time. This one is, of course, super simple. It's a basic trapdoor floor, which we've seen a million times. You got your pistons around the edges. You got your Sculk sensor about halfway down. That way you don't have time to realize that it's a trapdoor floor. And that's pretty much it. You could set this up to trigger with specific actions. So only trigger if someone is actually walking down it, not if they try to, like, throw a fishing bobber down there to like test if it's a trap or something. Just a couple other trap ideas for you. You could summon a whole bunch of splash potions of harming and poison at them just to really make their day not too fun. I'd recommend doing a whole bunch of poison potions and then a few seconds later doing the harming for maximum effect. You could also do something like a flaming arrow wall, which summons just a bunch of flaming arrows at them, ideally with more than one dispenser, or you could suffocate them as they're walking down a hallway or something. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind you that dispensers can automatically summon golems of both varieties, and they can do that for the big guy as well. Do not do that unless you're playing on an anarchy server. I just gotta put that disclaimer out there. Don't do that. Let me know your favorite use for the Sculk sensor down in the comment section below, and let me know if you think I've missed anything. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have greatly enjoyed and got some use out of today's tutorial. If you did, then consider dropping a like as it helps out the video and the channel an absolute ton. If you're new here, then maybe consider subscribing so you don't miss future content. Otherwise, I'll see you guys down in the comment section in the next one. And then there was silence.